Going on YouTube, welcome to another watercolor painting tutorial. Looking at the palette here, you see something slightly different than what you saw before. In the past, I was using the same kind of thing, the pan palette, but as you see here, the pan palette that I had before was much smaller. So what I did was I pre-mixed a bunch of tubes of paint into an arrangement starting from the lightest to the darkest of the orangey yellows, then the lightest to the darkest of the reddish browns. You can see just for comparison how much bigger the new palette is. Now, one thing to note that when you pre-mix these colors, you want to leave them. Let them dry. Leave them for a day. What they will do is they'll start to crack. And that's fine. What happens is when it cracks, it's because there's some oxygen or something in there that causes that to happen. So then what you want to do is just add water to it and let it sit for a while, which is one of the reasons I'm kind of late, is because I prepared this and my paper. This is the Arches 140-pound cold press that I'm using here. Now I will note that the paper is still slightly wet. I submerged it in water for about, 15 minutes. Then I took it out and then let it dry for 30 to 45 minutes. Sandwiched it with some panels so that it was as flat as it could be. Then I let it dry with the tape on here. But the problem was it was still too wet for me to start. So I had to wait a little bit, and we'll see how it goes. So, hey, Rockflower62, Grace, Giselle, Mark L, welcome everyone. The title of the video is watercolor better than acrylic for portraiture? And we're gonna find out, but ultimately it's really up to you to make the decision for yourself, and I think you should pretty much just experiment with whatever you want. So I will definitely admit that this is not going to be 100% buckleless, meaning it's going to buckle, and I've after enough research, I've figured out basically that what you got to do is get the heaviest weight Arches paper for it to not buckle. And I've done a couple experiments already, and each time it has buckled on me. So that's unfortunate, but it is what it is. So I'm adding a little bit of skin color, the light kind of yellowish pink that you see here, well, that you barely see here, now you see it all the way up top here. And what I'm gonna do is clean off the brush a little bit. This brush is not 100% clean, which is kind of an issue. Okay, Michael MC, welcome. As you see here, it's not 100% clean, and it's obviously gonna be a little bit of an issue. But what you want to do is you want to separate your brushes, acrylic versus watercolor, because it's still, even though I let time go by, this still has a little bit of acrylic in it, which is kind of a nuisance. So this is one of the reasons why I'm probably going to cut acrylic for the most part for a little while. Not forever, but I've had a lot of issues going back and forth between watercolor and acrylic. And in my opinion, I think that the watercolor has certain advantages to it when you're painting that acrylic doesn't. And there's certain similarities in terms of paint handling with watercolor that differ with acrylic, but acrylic has its own highlights, and that is the biggest one is that you can transition from acrylic into oil paint. You can't do that with watercolor. I mean, maybe somebody can, but I can't. So that's one of the things, the big takeaways here. The reference is from, not Unsplash, it's from Pixabay or whatever. It's just one of those copyright-free images. Working from general to specific is going to be my approach here. And I started off with these big shapes first. With a bigger brush, even though the brush isn't 100% clean, it does have some residual acrylic in it from who knows how long ago. So I did the best I could to clean it, but still it has some stuff in it from who knows when. One of the things that I like the most about watercolor as opposed to something like acrylic is the fact that you can reactivate the paint. It does have certain issues in terms of the paint buckling, or not the paint buckling, the surface buckling and things like that. But the issues that are presented with watercolor, I don't think are really that big of issues. And this is all like my opinion, right? It's not like anything I say is gonna be set in stone and you must only work that way. So, but certain things I've learned recently, like for example, pre-mixing these colors on the palette before painting, soak or just put a little bit of water droplets in here, and it just kind of expedites the process a little bit. Now that I've covered the outside shape here, I'm gonna go ahead and go in with the background really quickly here, and it's gonna be kind of a bluish gray. So bluish greenish gray is what I'm going for. And it's okay if it leans towards the greenish right now. Yeah, something like that will be fine. I'm not going in for the true value right away because I want to build up my layers a little bit uniform in the beginning. And of course, there's going to be way more layers for the skin color when we get in there. Appreciate everyone that's left a like on the video already. I'll leave some of the white of the paper for this area here. And now we're ready to start adding some shapes onto the face. Notice I didn't use any drawing, any kind of lines for this. And I'll show you why. You really don't have to use outlines that much with watercolor. I will say I really have to upgrade my brushes. I don't like having brushes this short, but that's just what I have to work with currently for watercolor. Now I'm gonna go on the outside, start to block in somewhat of a more specific shape. As you see, it is starting to buckle a little bit, but not too bad. It eventually evens out, never 100% perfect. I will upgrade my paper to the highest pound. I think the highest is like, so this one is 140. I think there's a I don't know, is it a 300 or something like that available? And when you're mixing in these little things, it's not like when you're mixing oil paint. You actually want to keep some water in here. And your mixture should not be very elaborate, it shouldn't be like oil paint. It should be just maybe one or two little things, and the rest should be done with what you have out here, which again is one of the advantages, I would say, of watercolor. Yeah, 300 pounds, rock flour 62. Yeah, 300 pounds. That's gonna be what I'm gonna get. Now here's the angle of the eyes. You know, I could be slightly loose with it. It's okay. angle of the nose about here, mouth about here, bottom of the chin now about here. And we'll adjust everything as we go. Going in with these warmer colors now, we're gonna put in the eye socket shape. That's gonna be the corner of the eye socket there. Eye socket on the other area there. Nose. These are all estimates. I will be able to push the shapes around with watercolor. This would not work with acrylic because once it dries, you can't reactivate it. One thing you want to do with watercolor, I'm sure you're aware, is to preserve the light of the canvas. So work as general as you can, and just be careful not to put in something this dark over here. As long as you work around the outside shape of the face, you should be good to go. You are able to adjust some stuff without losing the, say, I have to move an eye a little bit to the right or whatever. It can be done, and it probably will be done here, especially the mouth. I almost always have to adjust the mouth, so it's not an issue. That's where I'm guessing the bottom of the nose is going to fit. Like I said, this is a cheap brush. You can already see the ferrule came off, so this brush is a step above garbage, but it makes a mark, and it's all I got to work with right now with watercolor. But the money shouldn't be spent on the brushes per se, but rather the paper. You want to have really good paper, and yeah, of course the paint matters. But what matters the most in watercolor is the paper. You want a pretty solid paper. You can use cheap paper for sketching. It's not that big of an issue. But if you're gonna do a long-term thing like this, and this will be about 2 hours or so, or maybe 3 hours, but you definitely want to have good quality paper. And let the brushes be cheap garbage like this if you have to. Now I'm gonna put it in simplified shape for the shadow. More of a simplified shape with a generally warmish color for a shadow that will eventually place there. Now with oil paint, I can kind of move around like this. With watercolor, I'm a tad bit more like this. Again, drawing wise, lock the hairline, where the top of the hairline is going to fit probably about here, relative to this shape here for the hair. Covers part of the eyes. Now this, putting a line like that means you are absolutely sure that you're not going to raise this up anymore, and you can. You can, but preserve this light, and everything else is smooth sailing. Yeah, if I have to move the mouth, like I said, I've been there, done that. That was a tough video, I remember. And that's when I was just starting out with the watercolor. It was a nightmare, but we got through it. Now I'm not gonna go right in for the kill for that dark, because this is still lifting, so I have to give it time to do its thing. But what I can do is I can start to add some values there, and this is where I'm gonna rely on my mixtures here. One big broad mixture there. You can see it looks kind of greenish, but on the paper it should look warmer. I don't know, we'll find out. And that's pretty good. I'm gonna maybe gray it down a bit. See if that grayed it down at all. It kind of did. So this will fit down here. Now back to the eyes. Tear duct, I'm gonna put my foot down. Tear duct is gonna be there. And then here. Now I'm gonna have to relate these 2 points to the nose. Obviously her head is tilted down, which we already have, and of course the ferrule already fell off the brush again. Like I said, this brush is a step above garbage, but it'll work. And what I can do is tape it together. I think I still have my... Look at this, we're running on empty. My tape, even my tape, there's barely any tape left. We're running on empty, folks. We're gonna make it work. Alright, so now with a brush that's taped together, we're going to relate this point, and it's going to go straight pretty much down to the right for the edge of the nose there. And to this brownish mixture up here, pretty much just like a yellow ochre. And this angle is going to go up here. This goes down, gives me the bottom of the nose here. Okay, that works. Edge of the nose here. That's fine. Now we're going to relate the edge of the nose relative to the outside of the face, and this is actually pretty close. If anything, it moves to right there. So we can get away with not using a pencil drawing because watercolor allows you to do things like this. Solidify the eye. And the upper eyelid is up here, eyebrows up here. The hair comes across here. Pupil This curves down, curves back up, upper eyelid, change it to a warmer hue. We can do that really quickly now that we have the colors predetermined. On the palette, it's a warmer hue, so that's fine. We can always reactivate it as we go. And even, watch this, we can even push it now. See? You can't do that with acrylic. And even this, I can use it to blend right away. And you may think that it's ruined because there's a line for the eyebrow there, but no. We can turn this into a value just using the water to push that all the way up. See that? That's really simple. Oh yeah, the watercolor is very versatile. I myself wish I could have seen a video like this when I was, say, like 23, and had known that you can work this way with watercolor. I thought that if you made one little mistake, it was going to explode, but it turns out that's not the case. But it's very versatile. Now, drawing-wise, the relation of the eyes to the nose is vital relative to the outside shape of the face. And then we're going to pinpoint that down towards the bottom of the chin. Now this is going to drop to about there, maybe. Probably more, but we'll just leave it at that for now. Now you see why I didn't go into any specifics out here, because obviously I'm going to have to cut into it. The light up here is totally fine. You can, at this stage, still get some of the paper, the light of the paper back. Some of it, but I'm not going to worry too much about that. You always have the Chinese white that you can use. Plus, when we surround all the darks, we can even use our pink, and that's going to bring that light back. Like I said, outside shape of the face. Down to about there. That's good. Back here gives me the ear. Now we can work across the nose. Looking at the position of the nose, it's definitely close to being too short. I know if I make it a little bit longer, that would perhaps be the case. I don't know. I'm gonna figure that out right now. Reminds me of these wise words from one of my teachers named Karen Warshaw. She would say, if it looks wrong, it's probably wrong. If it looks right, it's probably wrong. So the best thing to do is to just kind of go off your gut. Don't measure it yet. Measuring in the beginning is only if you have a commission, and in that case, just trace it. Don't waste your time. Okay, so I moved the nose down a little bit. Top middle of the upper lip. Follow the philtrum all the way down. Pinpoint that area right there. Top middle of the upper lip. Angle of the lips pretty much should be a given relative to the eyes. So there, 1, edge of the mouth on one side and on the other. Lower lip. And of course I'm not going to be as fast with watercolor. I'm not as used to it as I am with oil paint. But messing around with the acrylic and the watercolor at the same time, like I said, was really messing me up. I could feel it was messing with me. Now these points mean that I can raise the chin to about, say right there, maybe more, maybe less, I don't know. Gracie said, always assumed watercolor didn't allow mistakes, so I hadn't tried it. Yeah, I think you did tell me that before, but for sure, I'd say definitely give watercolors a try if you're using acrylic, because you think that watercolor doesn't let you make mistakes. As you'll see, it's actually it's way more forgiving than you would think. I myself am probably guilty for a lot of people not using watercolor because I was afraid of it in the past. And to be fair, there's nothing wrong with acrylic. It's just different. It's really different. Like if you're gonna be using acrylic, stick with it, I'd say. Experiment with watercolor if you haven't used it, and then you'll find where they collide, and then you'll find that certain things that you can do with watercolor you can actually do with oil paint. They transfer quite well, but vice versa doesn't work. Hey, Owling Dog Design, no worries. We'll be here for a while. Yeah, I'm moving quite slowly, because I'm not as skilled with watercolor, nor am I as skilled with acrylic. I am an oil painter, but everything I'm showing you is stuff that I've learned recently about these materials. And my most recent discovery is that I do think watercolor is a tad bit better to use for portrait, but we'll find out. And the ultimate answer really is up to you, what you prefer. With acrylic, you can do murals, you can do underpaintings for oil paintings. You can do a lot of that stuff, so I could see why you want to use it, why people would want to use it. But for a standalone painting, say not a mural, not an underpainting for an oil painting, just for a standalone painting on its own, I do think watercolor has a certain advantage. Plus it looks pretty cool. Even when it buckles, it actually looks pretty cool. Oh, thanks, Giselle. Yeah, 30 minutes. Usually beyond this point in 30 minutes with oil paint, but with watercolor, not as proficient. But we're learning. We're all here to learn, I think. Some may be here for other reasons, but I don't know. I don't know. See, I mean, the aesthetic of it alone, I really like the aesthetic of it. There's something inherently painterly in a different kind of way about watercolor that you just don't get from other materials like acrylic. But you can start an oil painting this way, and it'll work. And thanks, Grace. So I'm killing off some of the top of the hair, and obviously this is gonna get more, I guess, of a grayish color, but I'll just leave the top alone for now, and we can start to add the specificity for the face. I'm gonna switch brushes to this one. This is a another cheap step above garbage. This is Artist Loft. As you see, I didn't even take this darn tape off. It's starting to annoy me. Get off of the brush. Yeah, I can't. There we go. Yeah, there we go. Biggest accomplishment of the night. Alright, so what do you say we start to add specificity? First thing I'm going to do is fix any drawing mistakes by just pushing the paint away like that. Ideally, you'd want to clean off your water at this stage, but I'm lazy. And like I said, there was some acrylic on that big brush, so it is causing a slight issue there, and that's just acrylic's way of getting back at me for all the stuff I've said about acrylic, especially since one of my most popular videos on here is an acrylic one. But we'll forget about that for now. I'm gonna change paper towel. Some people can do underpainting with anyone can do an underpainting with acrylic and then go over it with oil paint as long as it's properly dry. But I don't know about using watercolor. I don't think that would work. Going from like watercolor underpainting and going over with oil paint. I think watercolor is excellent as a standalone painting. It's fast, but it also allows you to rework it. Up to a couple painting sessions, even more, especially if you're using Arches paper, which has been around for a long time. Now the paper will do its thing. It'll start to buckle, but don't let that deter you. It eventually evens out, even the cheap ones. The biggest takeaway I would hope is that you can pre-mix your own pan palette. and you'll be able to push the lips around. So trying to put that down a little bit faster just so I can move it around if I have to, which I probably will have to. Now just the water alone should create a pink gradation. And you can do this with oil paint as well. Just thin out the paint with your mineral spirits, or if you have water mixable, just use the water. It's almost going to be the exact same. But if you try that with acrylic, it's going to give you some issues. The overall finish of a watercolor, the aesthetic of it alone, I think, is really something unique. There's something unique about the look of a watercolor, even at this stage. There's something about it. I'm just using the water to push the dark around to create a gray. But go ahead and comment down what your opinions are, what your thoughts are about acrylic versus watercolor. Do you prefer to use acrylic? Do you prefer to use watercolor? And I think the majority, I haven't really had too many people comment down that they only use watercolor. I've only met very few. By very few, I've met a total of 0. A total of 0 watercolor portrait artists that go to painting groups and actually use watercolor to create a painting during that painting session. I might be forgetting one. There had to have been one, but I don't remember. I remember a acrylic painter, and I was like, whoa, that's the next level. They had pre-mixed everything, just like what we have here, but even more excruciating accuracy. Even if you're watching this as a pre-recorded, go ahead, comment down what your thoughts are with acrylic versus watercolor. Obviously, as a standalone, I think the discussion is different. But for practicality's sake, yes, you can transform acrylic into an oil painting by just adding oil paints to it. You can also just create the whole thing with acrylic like we've done before. But I don't know. There's something about both of them are really easy to clean up. They're not that expensive to use. No worries, Grace. Yeah, the Stay Wet palette did help when I was using acrylic. But you still have, it's still a race against time to get transitions, value transitions. Whereas with this, it's not really a race against time. There's no worries about the paint being a certain way. And you can also have a different type of aesthetic with your painting with watercolor. And if you mess up and cover, say, like the earring, even though we still have light left for the earring, what if we messed up and covered it? Well, you can still use the Chinese white. So really no harm at all. And what I'll probably do is get a completely different tray of colors and mix just like a grayish tone. Because right now I'm a little bit limited. I shouldn't even have to be mixing. So a grayish would be even better, in addition to what I have currently. Pretty soon I will create a watercolor portrait tutorial, pre-recorded, just like I've done with oil painting in the past, but something more comprehensive. I have done one with acrylic before. There's a lot to be said with watercolor portrait. Even Sargent, I'm not that big of a fan of his watercolor portraits. And that's saying a lot because Sargent is one of the best in all of history. And I think his use of watercolor was different than mine. His use of watercolor was because I think it's just more convenient to travel with. I think he wanted to travel and paint without lugging around all the oil painting stuff. So I think he kind of preferred that loose aesthetic with his watercolor. And I'm sure if he wanted to, he could have made a Sargent looking painting with watercolor. Oh, thank you. So yeah, of course, Rock Flower 62. It has been in my mind for a while. I still need to work on using the 300-pound paper, and I haven't even ordered it yet. Still need to upgrade my brushes. So it'll still be a while to like create a pre-recorded video like that for watercolor. But you'll have plenty of live streams like this, so you'll be able to hang out with me as I learn more about this really nice material. It's pretty awesome. I like it. Gracie said most watercolor painters have been trained to paint flowers, leaving white areas to use masking fluid. So don't know the things you've learned as an oil painter playing with this medium. Naomi rewrote, you're painting wet on dry, but it would be softer using wet on wet. I did wet the paper. This is still slightly cold to the touch. It is still slightly wet on wet. But I didn't wet the paper during the beginning. I wet the paper about 30 minutes to 40 minutes prior to streaming. And yes, I learned that last time as well, that if the paper is dry, it takes a little bit more work to blend around and stuff. So yeah, it's not completely dry. But thank you for that comment. I appreciate anyone commenting about watercolor, or just anyone commenting in general. Thanks for watching from Switzerland. Now, of course, you want to let it dry somewhat as you start to blend around with the colors. But as you can see, it's still quite versatile. And I owe a lot of it to the fact that I put water on, not a lot, but some water droplets on the palette prior to streaming. And I let it sit for just about long enough till it started to stiffen a little bit, but not fully. I kind of wish that this had another row, even though I know this is meant to be closed. Just like another row. I could even make my own palette. All I need is the trays. So still, it's an unanswered question. Is watercolor better than acrylic for portrait painting? I'm expecting somebody to yell at me and say that acrylic is the best. But see, look how I can just reactivate that. I can lift that. Hey, Paul Perry, oh, thank you. See how I can lift this? Look at that. Just like oil paint. Just like oil paint. It alleviates some of the stress of thinking that you have to get everything perfect with watercolor. You really don't. You really don't have to be perfect with it. But it took some time, I will say. I almost gave up on it. I almost gave up on the watercolors because they were so different than what I was used to. And yet there's still so much more to learn. But in order for a material to be useful for portraiture, it needs to be versatile to the point where you can move shapes, wet into wet, for an extended period of time. Now, obviously, pastel is brilliant for portraiture, but it's not wet into wet. However, you can let the paint interact with other layers because it doesn't dry. So it has the versatility. And I will say acrylic just doesn't have that versatility. So you almost have to invent a way of painting that requires planning with specific planning between layers, and that's just not, to me, it's not very fun. I don't want to have an upper level manager walking in and telling me what to do. I'd rather just figure it out as I go and enjoy the process. It's more organic that way. That's what differentiates artists from, I don't know, from people that work in corporate fields. I mean, if it's fine if that suits you. I mean, everybody's personality is different. Everyone's interests are different. So Paul, you wrote, you find acrylic colors so gaudy and lack the subtlety you get from oil. Yeah, I could see that. Yeah, we've used some of the mediums with watercolor as well, but even the slow dryers still didn't quite get there. But I'm happy to be adding this to my content. The fact that you can do this kind of stuff with watercolor. So we're about 6 minutes till the break. Yeah, of course, with acrylic you can get the effects that you want. Like I said, it's not like it has to be one or the other for everyone, but it's curious to find people's experiences with them. I'm just sharing my experience with everybody. Now, acrylic, I will say, has this thing about it that when it dries, it depending on the brand, of course, but when it dries, it looks slightly different. These do something like that when they dry. They do sink in a little bit, so that's kind of universal, I think, to all paints. And I think this is dry enough. I'm going to add another coat to it. So it's blue for the background. First I'm going to outline. No, I'm not going to outline. First I'm going to do something a little drastic. I'm going to use blue. I'll mix it somewhere up here with the glass. Gray it out. Now obviously it's going to be too blue at first. I'm going to test that out. Darken it a little bit. Howling dog design, you like acrylics too? Oil paint art, oil paints can be expensive, you're right. Yes, you can tone down acrylics. So like I was saying, it's not like one or the other, but just sharing certain advantages that the watercolor has over the acrylic is more or less what I'm trying to show, but also get people's experiences with them. Everyone's experience is going to be different. We are all uniquely different. Yeah, watercolors are very different. But it just takes a little bit of experimentation here and there to figure out what type of process you want to use. For example, for this gray, with acrylic you could just mix it. Can't do that with this, so I'm going to have to figure something out. So I'm going to use the skin color and see how it interacts with that and creates somewhat of a gray. So I just kind of have to play around with it. I couldn't just mix a gray. But it is, all of this is going to darken. And we can probably use the Chinese white for the light. That might be too much blue, but whatever. Let's try it out. Just for fun. So we are at the 1 hour mark already. Time to go by pretty fast with this one. Oh, thanks, Oiling Owl Design. Yeah, using a medium will help with acrylic. I wish I could do it all. Oh, thanks. Okay, so it's been an hour. So that means it's going to be time to take a break. I'm only going to take a break for a couple, I don't know, maybe like 5 minutes or so. It's important to do this during your painting sessions because you don't want to just sit for 3 hours straight and then stand up and realize that the nose is too long or something like that. So it's important to get some perspective. It's also just good mental health wise to not hyper focus on one thing for so long. Easier said than done. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and take a break. I'm glad you liked the background. Have a good night, Mark L. Alrighty then, we are gonna go ahead and take a break for a little while. Don't go anywhere unless you absolutely have to. I'll be back in just a couple minutes. The video that I'm gonna play for you is gonna be silent, but it's gonna be footage from a Patreon video. So I'll be right back. Alrighty, it's been about 5 minutes, so let's go ahead and continue on with this painting. After returning, the first thing I see is usually a drawing mistake. And I do see a slight drawing mistake. Chin is still too long. So let's go ahead and adjust that. Get some more paper towel. Okay, so let's just use the value to move that up. And just a little bit of water, and we can use that to add some color to the neck and soften this transition, something like that. And that'll do. Now we can start to add the form, a little bit more form for the face. Well, now we're entering into the subtleties. We're going to start to subdivide the shapes. Now as you start to add smaller planes, you can follow the same exact process that you did with the bigger ones. You can get very, very realistic results using these methods. It's pretty neat. See how I reactivated that paint that was already there? That's one of the big takeaways from today, that's even possible. Or basically window shading. Picking a small area and making it realistic, one plane at a time. This idea of wetting the pan palette before starting is a real time saver, because some areas on here are dry. Some areas, let me show you. Here, this is all you do. Just, well, with a clean brush, obviously, droplets of water into your pan area. And then it'll start to, some areas are going to be very solid still, but others are going to be fluid. So you get to choose the fluidity that you want. Appreciate all the likes, everyone. Got 22. That starts to become slightly darker, closer to the edges. Hey Jonas, still have to hear that song, the one about Vincent van Gogh. Yeah, you did tell me that it's a sad song, but I'll give it a try. It can be a struggle being an artist. Being a creative person can be a struggle because it's hard for people to relate to you. It's hard for you to relate to others. A lot of times we're in our own heads. And that's why it's good to have another outlet, like playing pool or playing a musical instrument like Sargent did. Each layer now becoming more and more exacting. Lonely Hearts Band. I think I might have missed something there. As you can see, the buckling is actually almost non-existent. So when you do add certain layers, it does buckle, but then it just kind of evens out. I want to say wetting the palette prior to the session might have actually done something. In the past, I didn't really notice that big of a difference. I'm glad you like the contrast, light and shadow contrast. I'm gonna get to the hair in a second, especially on the forehead. It's above the forehead, something we need to develop a little further now. But the Arches paper, definitely a big improvement over what I had before, no doubt. Sargent music, the Beatles. Sargent listened to the Beatles, maybe? Did he paint a yellow submarine? Back to the dark blue. Oh, so he did play an instrument, I think. Sergeant Pepper's Lonely Heart Club Band. Oh. Yeah, my bad, I didn't know. But yeah, I think Sergeant played an instrument. Somebody will correct me. I might be confusing him with some. Was it the violin he played, or? Seems like all geniuses play the guitar. Not the guitar, the violin. The violin. But of course, geniuses play any instrument. The guitar, the piano, triangle, I'm sure. This new generation doesn't even know of what bands, like MGMT. Anybody remember those days? Right, the triangle too. Alright, so now returning to the neck, we're going to work on the clavicle. Yeah, cowbell. We still haven't had to use any light over dark. We may end up using that out there later. I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. We'll see. Well, thanks, Rock Flower. I'll see you next time. Starting to get more refinement. Thanks, Grace. Lonely Hearts Club album. Sounds familiar. Now I'm using some of the light over dark, which will create a gray. This should look somewhat gray. And now we'll be able to build towards the light on the face. Subtlety of the forehead. And now a very delicate area. This is the difference between being 14, 24, 34, and 44, and on and on. Boom. That area. So proceed with absolute caution. But also note that it is a painting. Paintings are not meant to be an exacting science. If that is the case, then we take up photography. I am Howling Dog Design, streaming directly to YouTube. I'm using an app called OBS, Open Broadcasting Software, I think that's called, which has been really glitchy lately, lots of glitches, so not saying it's the best to use, it's just free to use. I think most live streamers on YouTube are using OBS. It also has a feature where I can stream to Facebook at the same time. Probably should do that. Facebook is getting huge these days, so got to do that. I will be creating some shorter videos with this content. So just using the same footage but creating shorter videos. I made a funny one, at least to me it was funny, for Instagram yesterday. We didn't have too many people in the audience considering it was oil painting. So I created kind of a funny video complaining about the lack of people there. And yeah, I think I also posted it to Facebook. It's kind of cool, the new tools that they have to help you edit short videos. Yeah, you can use 3 cameras. Right now I only have 2. I mean, I could put a third one in there too, but I don't think anybody wants to see my face. It would probably scare most of you away. But yeah, I used to do live streams like that where you'd actually be able to see me talking to you, but turns out that's not the smartest move. No es muy inteligente. Este pintor no sabe nada. Google Translate that. What? So let's add some little drawing things here. I'm gonna move this eye. Didn't I say I'd have to move an eye? I have to move this one to the left. Oh, thanks, Owling Dog Design. This might be one of the few paintings that I actually want to keep. Something about the flow of the watercolor, I think, is pretty unique. Oh yeah, that's right. I'm still in the Hugo videos. That's true. No wonder no one saw those videos. That makes sense. It all makes sense. Words have power, even in Spanish. Well, didn't say anything that I wouldn't say in English. I think I said I don't know anything. At least when it comes to, I was referring to streaming. Yeah, schedule is Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. I'm swapping acrylic out with watercolor for Thursday. Tuesday, I'm going to do something a little different. It might be up for discussion later, but for now, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday is the same, 4 o'clock. Thanks for sharing the demos on Twitter and Facebook. Blue Sky. I didn't know. I don't even know what Blue Sky is. YouTube unsubscribed. Oh, okay, yeah. Yeah, maybe it's time to start streaming to multiple different resources or whatever platforms. Facebook will probably be the first other one that I'll stream to. So yeah, we'll probably stream to Facebook. I don't even know what X is streaming. I don't even know what that is. Oh, no, I wasn't. You're correct. I wasn't there Tuesday. I was trying to figure out what to do with the schedule and just kind of drew a blank. So sorry about Tuesday. It could be perhaps that Tuesday will be like a hybrid stream, like Patreon and YouTube. I don't quite know yet. I had to do something though because acrylic was confusing me. Transitioning between acrylic and watercolor was really confusing me. Oh, thanks, Giselle. Let's see. YouTube X is the old Twitter. I never even heard of that. I never even heard of it. Alright, so let's add the light now into the dark, into the darkness, onto the darkness. So is this dry enough? Meh. Maybe. Let's see what happens here. I'm gonna use this one. It's a light yellow ochreish color. I gotta make sure I don't have too much water or else it's gonna drip. Which may not be all that bad. Try this one. That works. Can't do it everywhere though. It's gotta have some taste. And if all fails, you just paint right over it. No biggie. No biggie. I guess this brushstroke here is notorious. It's notoriously blue. This brush stroke looks awfully small. Oh, someone took over Twitter. Hey, Francisco, welcome, welcome. I didn't know that. Blue Sky, I never even heard of that before. So much I don't know. See, I told you we could paint light over dark. It's not necessarily the best, but it works. It works. I didn't know. Once the mixing space starts to harden, the best thing you can do is mix right into it. But there's something nice about when it's like kind of in between, like that. It gives you a certain control. Oh, that would make sense now, what you're describing about the platforms being taken over by certain people. That would make sense. I did notice something quite drastic and incredibly stressful over the past couple weeks. Dang. That makes sense. Paintings will be available for sale pretty soon. I already have one for sale, and I took the Rembrandt off of the Etsy. I don't even want to use Etsy, to be honest, because I've heard a lot of stuff about Etsy as well. So maybe the answer is to do something with my email or whatever. Hit me up on my email and do a sale. Appreciate all the likes, everyone. We made it to 23, and we're 6 minutes away from the next break. Oh, but that makes so much sense. Why certain things kind of tanked on the internet. That makes a lot of sense now. Yeah, I've never even signed on to Twitter. It's funny, as soon as we start talking about the internet, certain things about the internet, all of a sudden our view count shrinks by like a third. Interesting. The robots, they're onto us. But back to the original topic, I will say, at least for me, I've noticed that watercolor is on its own, as a standalone, start to finish with the same medium. It has certain advantages over acrylic, and if you haven't tried it out, I'd suggest giving it a try, especially with the right paper. This is the Arches 140-pound cold press, though I would suggest the 300-pound. 300-pound. The painting is alright. It's going alright. I'm missing a piece of light. What am I using? Say this pinkish color. Should be some light. And there goes a helicopter. They're onto us. Right here. And here. And here, and here, and here, and here, and here. Not your part. It's not your fault. It's not your fault. Yeah, I thought about that as well, but creating your own website, using different building softwares it's like me trying to learn how to speak Latin. You know, it's just, what are you gonna do? Gonna learn to speak Latin. So I got 2 minutes till the break. When we return, more subtlety awaits. It's a very fun material to use. Very low maintenance. Cleanup is a breeze. And that lifted, of course, I didn't let it dry fully. But of course you can paint wets into wet, as long as you get the right value. Just paint a little thicker, like that. something like that. Oh, thanks, Paul Perry. Voldemort. Who must not be named. Now we got some Harry Potter references. Any Harry Potter fans here? Mr. Potter. You're a wizard. You're an artist, you Pari. A what? I can't be an artist. Seven years later. Here we are. Or 8 years. I don't know. Whatever. I don't know much about Harry Potter. Probably should. Okay, got that brownish color. Why I painted it that way, I wanted some contrast. And I want to paint light into that, so still need to figure that out before we go on break. Once I figure it out, I'll take a short break. Yeah, she had some kind of site for her stickers, as I recall. I don't know what kind of site it was. Yeah, Squarespace. That's what I was looking at before, but it is like speaking another language to me. There we go. That's what I wanted. That transition is exactly what I wanted. Not easy to do, but we got it. That wouldn't have even been easy to do with oil paint. But we did it. We did. And still her jaw needs to be a tad bit smaller. So we'll fix that when we return. But it's a good idea to go on break now. When we return, I will have another go at this. Add a tad bit more subtlety to the face, but not really much will be left there. You also do the Hagrid voice. That's funny. I wish that was possible. So some things are just not even a wizard could do. But yeah, I'm gonna take a break and I will return in just a couple minutes. Don't go anywhere unless you absolutely have to, and I will be right back. Alrighty, I have returned and it's time to finish this painting. Yeah, Patronus spell rather than Patreon. That'd be kind of interesting. I used to have bearded dragons, and then I moved to Northern Virginia, and I wasn't able to keep them. But you know, such is life. Things change. The only constant in life is change. I wonder if anybody remembers my bearded dragons from the daily Yupari days. Whew. That's a long time ago. Gryffindor. According to someone, I'm supposed to be a Slytherin. I never wanted to be a Slytherin. Just because I used to have pet snakes. As you can see here, it has buckled very little. I mean, running my hand around the edges, I can see that it's buckled on the edges, or feel that it's buckled on the edges, but not very much on in the middle, hardly at all. So that's a good thing. Oh, thanks, Grace. I'm glad I'm not a Slytherin. Not according to some people, though. Kind of interesting that I feel like Harry Potter is going to turn into like Star Wars, where like the new generation's not even going to know. Like what's that? They're going to know the remake of all the Star Wars, right? We were talking about that yesterday. So I still have to watch that one, the Ander. I think that's what you called it, something like that. I'll paint the earring in there. Hey, Christopher. Thank you. Thanks, Christopher. Hope you have a happy new year as well. hopefully everyone looks forward to many more of these streams. And we'll figure something out in terms of the sales and whatnot. What concerns me the most, I think, is pricing. I know I can't price these through the roof, but at the same time I can't give them away, so it's a little, I don't know, something I still have yet to figure out. I've had like 30 years to figure it out. It's like trying to solve a millennium question, or whatever they call it. Millennium problem. Gotta be careful with that area. Only a little bit is needed. The model can't be any more than like 24. But wasn't I going to correct the chin? Yeah, I think I was. Let's do that. Yes. Prince. Cliche prints. That's a possibility. Limited number. That's a possibility. Well, I think part of the problem is, since we're having an open conversation about this, that most of what I do is portraiture. Most of what people want, landscape, still life. I do a lot of figurative work, or at least I used to, but that's not YouTube friendly. Or Instagram friendly, I guess, either, so. Da, da, da. At least we somewhat fixed the jaw. Is gouache watercolor too expensive for you? These are not that expensive. I think these are mostly the Artist Loft, the cheaper ones. But for, I will say the majority of these, I did use these little mixtures. This strand here, I used, honestly, I think I forgot the name. I think it's called Blue. Something Blue. Hey, Fusta. Well, if you find watercolors difficult to use, I'm glad that this is helpful. Always know that you can ask any questions that you have about the process, about how I work during the stream. Any questions that you have, you can always fast forward this as well after the stream ends. A lot of it has to do with the paper, I will say. Yeah, and the fact that I wet this paper about 30 to 45 minutes prior to beginning the stream, so that it was just wet enough that there's still like the channels of water or whatever. Because when it's dry, I found that when you start with one wash, now you have a bubble of water that's like right here, and so the paper's like, what do I do? Whereas where it's like still wet, it's like, oh, okay, water kind of just flows. But if it's too wet, the tape doesn't even stick to it, and then it's kind of hard to make a mark. And if it's too dry, well, then you already know. It starts to create like little bubbles. So I think having the right timing between like when you start, and of course as you go, as time goes by, the paper dries, doesn't it? So it will have a tendency to start buckling yet again, but it evens itself out. All in all, it's not too bad. Yeah, you wrote whatever you use, it stays on top of the paper. Yeah, it should. I mean, this is not completely 90 degrees. It's probably about, and if this is 90, it's probably angled like this. Not because it's watercolor, but because my camera. So my head is actually right underneath. So it's just because of the camera angle. But yeah, it'll stay on. Oh, thanks, Grace. Yeah, I thought about that route too, but it's not. There's the competition for the commissions is it's kind of a thing. But the answer is just to try different things. I like. Whoops. I appreciate all the input, of course. Yeah, this cloth won't. This paper won't tear that easily. Oh, I missed the one comment from Giselle. Yeah, it is difficult. The pictures that you get from people are far from ideal for paintings. The goal really is to just maintain these streams and to, of course, be able to grow how many people are interested in them. But I understand that people are more and more these days into the short videos. We'll figure something out. Now that the paper is mostly dry pretty much everywhere, I'm not going to want to go in with lots of washes anymore. So it's going to be more piece by piece, less water as you go, which is why I like this pan setup with the water, because as this starts to dry, so does this. So it tells you basically now it's time to slow down and start to add less water and start to, just like this, as you see there, start to add smaller planes and develop more precision within your smaller planes. So if you're not too familiar with watercolor, that'll save you a lot of time, because the palette tells you what's going on with the painting. Very unique. All of the other materials aren't like that. See how you can add these little gradations. Small, but still noticeable enough. what do I think about oil paints? Oh, it's my absolute favorite. If I could use oil paint every single day, I would. But I'm using different materials on YouTube because it's kind of like a series, I guess. Pushing the boundaries, showing that the fundamentals are universal no matter what material you use. Yeah, we did oil painting yesterday. It's my absolute favorite material to use. But I do like a challenge. I consider watercolor a really good challenge to any oil painter. And just like there's a fine line between too much paint and too little water. I mean, too much paint without the water starts to get kind of like this gooey feel. So you kind of have to experiment with how much you can use without going too far. But when done properly, you can get really, really smooth edges like this that you would think are impossible to achieve with watercolor. Let's see, what did I miss here? Let's see. Let's see, Owling Dog Design wrote, you like the oils very much. Christopher wrote, had a nightmare trying to oil paint a photo taken from a smartphone. Fusta says, it's normal for it to take days to dry. Owling Dog Design says months. Let's see. Giselle wrote, the people who find you respect you. Fusta, you wrote, you're new to art. Oh, well, welcome, Fusta. Yes, and it does take many days for an oil painting to dry. This is true. Oh, thanks, Owling Owl Design. You did mostly digital, now start doing traditional. You actually enjoy it so far. That's great. Oil paint can be expensive, but for portraiture, if you buy the Zorn palette, it's not too bad. But yeah, they do take a while to dry. Let's address that for a second here. Oil paint does take a while to dry. It depends on the climate. Like if you have lots of humidity, it could take up to a week to be dry enough to glaze, for example. However, if you paint thinner, that is, you use less of a thick application of paint, but more small pieces at a time. Kind of like this, actually. Almost exactly like this. Thin it out with just maybe a tad bit of mineral spirits, not very much. It dries a lot faster. For it to be ready to be varnished by Demar varnish, it will take up to 6 months. That's why they invented Gamvar, which is a varnish you can use when the paint is touch dry, so you can varnish in as little as a week to 2 weeks. Oh, thanks, Naomi. Oil pastels, yeah, they're pretty cool, but make sure that you buy the Senneliers. Because the cheap oil pastels, actually this goes for the soft pastels as well. The cheap pastels are really kind of not worth the money you save on cheap pastels. Trust me, I did this the first time I was gonna like use pastels. I just bought the Expressionist, like the cheap stuff, and it's no good. Like the experience you get from that is just nothing compared to like buying Sennelier or Rembrandt brand. And the jaw is a little more round than what I have. Do I want to chase it? Might as well. Might end up regretting this. But this, just to show you, watercolor is a little more forgiving than you might think. And now we've made the jaw a little more round. And I'm just using the water itself to lift this up, which is going to make this buckle a little bit. And it's fine. It's something I'm aware of. But this is the point where I would suggest you let the painting sit now for about a day or so. Then you can work on it again. I'll show you an example of that actually. So first of all, let me fix this part and show you what to do if you want to keep working on the painting. It's now transitioning into wet over dry. So what that means is what you're gonna do is you're gonna paint in a plane and maybe let it sit a tad bit longer. So let it sit for, I don't know, like a minute, 2 minutes, move on to another area. And trust me, it's not as complicated as you might think. Let's see. Oh, you bought the, I think that's the Alkyd paints. Oh, good. I'm glad you like them. Yes, the thicker the longer it takes to dry. Yeah, the Alkyds, they are pretty good. True. Yeah, sometimes companies tend to sell air. And same with potato chips. Yeah, that's true. That's true. So when your painting starts to act like you're painting wet into dry, let it sit for a little bit like I did there. Then add water to it again. And perhaps a little bit of paint, why not? And then add in your transition. There. So what it does is, when you let it sit for a little bit, it's just like what I mentioned yesterday about oil paint. Once it starts to solidify a little bit on the canvas, it's easier to blend. Same thing here. So when it's wet over dry, it absorbs right away onto the paper, and then it's a nuisance to move around. But if you let it sit for just a little bit, you can blend right into it like that and create this transition that we want. But when you do that, be very sure that you're done with it. Leave it alone. And in this sense, it does handle very similar to watercolor. Also, this water is too dirty. This should not, you should not do this anymore. So change out your water, because some of this darkness is coming from the water. So I'm gonna dump this out and get some clean water. So once your water starts to do this, dump it out. So I'm gonna go do that now. Okay, so this is not entirely clean, but it's a little bit cleaner than it was before. So what you can do is go back to your light, just like we did with the chin. Anything that you want to lighten, you can do just like that with the pre-mixture. But that's usually the point where the watercolor is like, well, I'm gonna just have to say, time for you to work on another painting. Or just let it sit. But now when you rework a watercolor, there's many ways to do it. But for example, let me take one that's dry. This is a little sketch, and it's dry. So what you can do is, say you want to work, I don't know, you want to add more subtlety to this section here. So what you can do is actually almost treat it like oil paint. So I'm adding the light over top of the dark like that. See how I got that transition now? And you can continue to work subtleties that way, and that's totally fine. Like here, look. So this is if you want to work on your watercolor the next day. And these papers, they allow you to do that. They're thicker, they're not going to fall apart. But generally, you kind of don't want to. You want to be able to work quickly and not just pile on a bunch of paint into one spot. So that being said, that's almost it. That's almost everything that I'm gonna do for this. There are some little details like necklace. I guess we'll add the necklace, and I guess that could maybe be it. I do see that this is a little too light relative to everything else, so we'll adjust that. But that's pushing it here. That's pushing it. I wouldn't suggest putting that much paint into the light as I did there. And in that sense, going back to the original topic of the video, acrylic has an advantage because you can just keep piling and piling and piling paint over top of the paint. Again, not that big of an issue. Now let's add the necklace. Yeah, fat over lean, very important for oil painting. Now with watercolor, since it's all mainly done the same day, the same layer, because watercolors are not necessarily meant to work on for months like oil painting and even acrylic. But even I wouldn't suggest working on an acrylic painting for more than 2 weeks. But it's really not designed to be something that you work on for an extended period of time. And I'm pretty sure that's why Sargent and the rest of them only used it for quick plein air sketches. Glad you liked the information. And thanks for talking about the fat over lean, Giselle. So, well, that's almost about it, everyone. Tomorrow I'll either use soft or oil pastel. The topic for tomorrow, of course, is which one is best for portraiture, which you already know the answer. It's up to you. Really, it's up to you. Same thing about tonight. What's best for portraiture? Is it acrylic or is it watercolor? And the answer is yes. That's the real answer. It all depends on you. Do you want to do a quick yet realistic painting and only use one material? Then watercolor is best. So mainly I'm describing what I'm doing here during these live streams. However, if you want to create a painting that you can eventually layer over top of with oil paint or water mixable oil paint, then acrylic is best for you. If you're more comfortable and happier with acrylic, then acrylic is best for you. Same thing goes with the watercolors. Tomorrow will be, I'm aiming for the same time, 4 o'clock p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. A surprise session. That might be on a Tuesday. Shouldn't I sign this? Why were we just talking about signing yesterday? I'm going to sign it while we wait for any last minute questions. Thanks, Owling Dog Design, and everyone for watching, attending the stream, writing a comment down, liking the video. We got 28 likes today. Thank you, everyone. Gonna go ahead and sign it. You never know, we might sell it one day. I really like signing with watercolor. I'll sign it down here. Signature bottom left. And she's looking at the signature. See, that's a compositional win right there. When the model is looking directly at the signature. Now that is how you win. Thanks, Fusta. I'm glad you liked the stream. I'm glad it was relaxing for you. Alrighty then, that's all I got for you today, everybody. Remember, the streams are 4 o'clock p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, Wednesday through Friday, and stay tuned for what I will be doing on Tuesdays. But once again, I will see you all same time tomorrow with pastels. Thank you so much for watching. I wish you the very best, and I'll see you tomorrow.